in an MRI. So this is what an inferior recess obliteration looks like. So here, if you see on the left-hand side, there's a pouch. So this is the normal synovial fluid which is present in the inferior pouch. And if you see the image on the right-hand side, that pouch is suddenly not seen. So that is what we call as a obliteration of the recess. And this is the first thing which you see on an MRI and routinely see. So, whenever I talk to a patient or I try to explain it to him in a non-medical language, then I always explain frozen shoulder the way it was explained to me by my mentor who is currently working in Sydney. So he used to always tell the patient that imagine you are sitting in a room. Now the room has 4 walls, it has a roof and a ceiling. Now what happens in a frozen shoulder is this room is a 100 square feet room. This 100 square feet room has a ball which is moving inside the room. This ball has a good range of movement and keeps moving in all the planes, all the directions, and it has enough space to move around. Now you bring all the walls closer. You reduce the area of the room from 100 square feet to 20 square feet. Now suddenly the ball size is the same. The walls have gotten closer and the space has reduced. Now the same ball tries to move around and basically there is no space for the ball to move around. And that is what is a frozen shoulder. So the only way to allow the ball to move is either to cut the walls open or to push the walls behind. So that is how the treatment of frozen shoulder goes. So if I'm well understood, then this is the kind of simple language I try to explain the patient in, that always try to push the walls, and that is where the physiotherapy is involved. So in order to push the walls, you have to stretch the walls. You can't just ask them to break the walls. You have to stretch the walls. And worst case scenario, if things don't work out, then you try and cut the wall open and then you stretch the wall. So that is how a treatment for a frozen shoulder in simple language goes like. So as I said, what is the aim of the treatment? So the aim of the treatment is to give a pain relief for the patient, give them good range of movements, and the result should be sustained. Years later, the patient should come to you with a pain-free shoulder. There should not be any sort of stiffness in the shoulder which has resulted post-treatment. So if so the patient asks the doctor, look, I'm having a lot of pain. You have advised me so and so treatment, but still I don't want to undergo any sort of procedure. What is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing is the pain will actually get better, but it will take 2 to 3 years. So the patient should be ready to bear the pain for 2 to 3 years. So if they come to you and they are not completely happy, you always tell them the natural history itself is 3 years. What we are trying to do is shorten the curve. Now everyone knows because of COVID, and the reason we are conducting the webinar is to flatten the curve. So that is exactly what frozen shoulder is about. Like the physiotherapy post frozen shoulder is about flattening the curve. Try and reduce the level of pain and try and bring it to normal as soon as possible. So that should be our aim of treatment. So whatever we do, whichever way we try to do it, the end result should be always flattening the curve. Next, if you ask a patient that if they have not undergone any sort of treatment, but they have claimed to be completely all right, then the patient still has 60% persistent stiffness. They have learned to live with it. So they won't complain, but the range of movement on a calculation is still 60% of normal. So it's not completely normal, but they have learned to live with it, so they won't complain. Next, if a patient has post-trauma and he has developed a stiff shoulder, then that sort of is a resistant problem. And years, maybe even 3 years later, the patient is never happy. So that is how a natural history progresses. So how we define a treatment? We define a treatment for a frozen shoulder by first identifying the pathology, finding out the root cause, and tailor-made treatment for every patient. That is what I believe in. Every patient can't be having the same treatment for a frozen shoulder. If one particular movement is more stiff than the other, that is the movement we are supposed to focus on. So some patients have an external the internal rotation, the patient should be actually pushed for getting the external rotation back before the rest of movement. So every treatment should be tailor-made. So whenever you see a patient, in your clinic, you always see the patient. So you examine the patient, and then you have, as I said, you palpate the patient. Now in palpation, you have to first find out. I always ask the patient to palpate for the long head of biceps. I keep insisting on it. Whenever I had a lecture last time also, I had a lecture with Predak, and I always ask my group of physiotherapists to first palpate for the long head of biceps. So where does the long head of biceps lie? If you, place your finger on the shoulder, you will feel the greater tuberosity. That is where your rotator cuff is inserted. A little bit medial to it will be your long head of biceps. So long head of biceps is a cord which is felt, and you can move your fingers and feel a cord moving underneath your fingers. That is the long head of biceps, which is always the first thing you should check when a patient presents to you. Any painful shoulder always should be examined by first feeling for the long head of biceps. The long head of biceps is never to be missed, and it is the most painful pathology inside the shoulder 95% of the time. I'm repeating, it is actually 95% of the times. So once you feel the long head of biceps and it is tender, it points out to the secondary frozen shoulder, a non-diabetic frozen shoulder. Why am I talking again about the long head of biceps? Is because even a patient with diabetes mellitus, I have had this a lot of times, have been misdiagnosed as a primary frozen shoulder. So a patient with a diabetes can have a painful biceps, and that may be the cause of treatment. It may not be diabetes. So always don't have that single-minded or a narrow vision that every diabetic patient is going to have a diabetic frozen shoulder. No, they can also have a diabetic frozen shoulder. So a diabetic frozen shoulder with a painful biceps is not a diabetic frozen shoulder. It's a secondary frozen shoulder. So always remember, palpation is very important. Finding out the root cause is very important. Why is it important? Because in a diabetic frozen shoulder, what you do is you ask the patient to push them for getting a good range of movement. But if the patient has a pathology inside the shoulder and you ask them to push the shoulder, it may lead to aggravation of symptoms. So it may not be the direction you want to head in. So as I said, what treatments do you advise a patient with a stiff shoulder? You can, so I'm talking of stiff shoulders at both the aspects, like, if the patient has a pathology or the patient has a primary. So you have first tried analgesics and NSAIDs. You always try physiotherapy along with it. So physiotherapy, if you see all my treatment options, you can see physiotherapy mentioned at every stage. Physiotherapy is that important. It has to be done at every stage. Whatever treatment you give has to be supplementing physiotherapy. So giving them the right exercises is the mainstay of treatment. But along with that, you either try and clear the pathology inside, or you just do some procedure so that your physiotherapy becomes easier. So in a diabetic frozen shoulder, you give them analgesics, you do a hydrodilation, you do an arthroscopic release, and then do physio. If there is a bursitis or a impingement syndrome, then you give an intralesional steroids and then do physiotherapy. So exercises are important, but you should always know that when to advise the patient analgesics, when to give them steroids, and when to advise them arthroscopic release. I usually follow this as a flow chart. So I never skip steps. So if there is a patient who requires analgesics, that's the first step. They always have to try an analgesics or NSAIDs at their own level. If it's not improving, they may go for intralesional steroids. Still no relief, they can go for an USG guided hydrodilatation. It's not very common in India, but there are some radiologists who are trained to do that. So that is one of the treatments. And worst case scenario, if nothing works, then arthroscopic release is the final step. So what is arthroscopic release? Arthroscopic release is basically using arthroscopy to cut the capsule open and then advise physiotherapy. So why is it important is because we have something called as an RF probe. So if you see in the slide, there is a thing called as RF probe. It's called as a radio frequency probe. It is a underwater cautery because every surgery of the shoulder in arthroscopy is done underwater. So there is a fluid pump which keeps on pumping fluid. We sort of inflate the shoulder, we stop the bleeding, and then using the RF probe, we cut the capsule open. So it works underwater, and we can, under visualization, open up the capsule. So anatomically, as we know, the capsule is present 360 degrees around the glenoid. We have to cut the capsule all along the glenoid. Once we cut it all along the glenoid, the forward flexion is easier, the external rotation and the internal rotation. So just to give you a basic knowledge or know-how about the anatomy, the front part of the glenoid, or if you see this one, if I cut the front part of the glenoid, I aid in the external rotation. If I cut the back portion of the capsule, I aid in internal rotation. And if I cut the inferior portion of the capsule, I help in forward. So when three directional when the entire circumferential area of the capsule is released, then it leads to 3-directional movement of the, or 360 directional movement of the shoulder. So that is important, that everything is done under visualization. During the earlier times, there was something called as manipulation. Some patients do ask me that, sir, I was advised manipulation. So what is the difference in manipulation and arthroscopy? Basically, they are the same. But in manipulation, you do it as a blind procedure. You try to keep a short lever arm and you just manipulate the shoulder under anesthesia. You try to break open the capsule. But you don't know exactly which capsule has completely been released. Is it the inferior? Is it the anterior? Is it the posterior? Sometimes some segment is intact. So it may not lead to a complete release. That's when arthroscopy is better because you can do it under visualization. You can look inside, you can cut it along the along the visual field, and you can open it 360 degrees. So that's where arthroscopic capsular release is very important. So instead of just giving a boring lecture, I'll just have a little bit of a case-based discussion. So this is one female who presented to me. She was a 64-year-old female. She had stiffness since 3 months. She was a known case of uncontrolled, very simple case actually, because she had a classical history of uncontrolled diabetes. She had no history of trauma. On examination, she had forward flexion of 85, internal rotation was only up to the waist, and external rotation was 0 degrees. So this is a very typical presentation for a primary frozen shoulder, which is an uncontrolled diabetes mellitus frozen shoulder. So obviously the first thing I do according to the protocol is start with analgesics and physio. So she gave a genuine attempt to aggressive physiotherapy. She tried it for at least a month, 2 months. And even after that, her improvement in range of motion was insignificant. So that is very important. She should have some improvement, but it should be significant. If there is not much improvement, then we can say that the treatment is not really working. And then we can go ahead to the next step. She didn't have the option of undergoing any hydrodilatation or any intralesional steroid. So what we advised her was she undergo an arthroscopic release. So that's what we decided. We decided to go for an arthroscopic capsular release. And the most important thing while undergoing this procedure is to do a continuous passive movement for 3 days. So either there is a machine to do it, or in like in my hospital or in Pune, there's not really a CPM machine for the shoulder. So what we do is we ask the patient to do it manually. So we train the relatives. So what I try to do is I train the relatives with the help of physiotherapist who works at my hospital. I always do sort of a supervised training program for the relative, and the relative has to literally for every hour 20 minutes, he has to keep the shoulder in a completely full forward flexion position. So he has to sort of continuously do physiotherapy for 3 entire days, and that's when the patient will achieve some sort of a result. So continuous passive movement post-surgery for the first 72 hours is very crucial to getting a long-term result. So if I do an arthroscopic release, I admit the patient for 3 days. I do not discharge the patient right the next day, because that is what I commonly do for my Bankarts or for my rotator cuff repairs. But for a patient with an arthroscopic release, 72 hours admission is a must, because that's where they can do a supervised training program under my supervision. Next, aggressive physiotherapy at home. So even if the patient goes home, every 3 days they have to either report to me by some sort of sending video, or come to the hospital and show me that they are actually doing those physiotherapy exercises. So I can't leave a patient unattended. If the patient doesn't call me, I have literally gone home and checked the patient for their physiotherapy, because that is how you should be focused towards getting the result. Otherwise, your entire effort of doing an arthroscopic release is completely waste if the patient does not follow up on your instructions. If you see, this is the same patient. So if you see her external rotation was 0 degrees. If you see on the right side, her forward flexion on the other side is 180 degrees, and on the right side is just 85 degrees. So this patient is the one who was having this uncontrolled diabetes. If you see, she's just before entering the theater. So even post physiotherapy, this was her range of movement, which was not quite satisfying for the patient. So this was the intraoperative picture. If you see, if you see here, there is the middle glenohumeral ligament, and this has become quite cord-like or quite thick. And this thick middle glenohumeral, along with this redness, shows that there is a lot of inflammation inside the shoulder and a lot of stiffness. So what we do is we use this radio frequency wand and we cut open the capsule. So here you can see the radio frequency wand is literally cutting the capsule. We create a circumferential space between the glenoid and the humerus, and we cut open the capsule. And after cutting open, here you can see what is called as a divided capsule. So this is the glenoid, this is the rest of the capsule, and you can see there is a rift over here, and this rift is sort of opening up of the joint. This is the same patient who is immediately 24 hours post surgery. You can see she still has an IV on her hand, and this is immediately 24 hours post-op, and that is the kind of result you should expect. So here the patient